Facebook, not Twitter today because Twitter's having issues, but Facebook, YouTube, Twitch, and TikTok. My name is Jared Budlong. I'm running as an independent candidate for governor here in Alabama this year. And one of the things I'm doing differently than most candidates that I've seen, at least in our state, is I'm running in as transparent of a campaign as possible. So today is one of those examples where if someone wants to have a meeting with me, the default is to have a live stream, and that way our conversation is public record and people can hear what we talk about and the things that the campaign is learning and wanting to do better about, especially to help the state. Today's one of those examples. Charles, you wanted to meet about Medicaid, so we're going to kind of jump into it. The thing I'll give you the opportunity to do is introduce yourself and give as much or as little detail as you want. Again, we have discussed very little ahead of this call. It's kind of
Right.
like I had an open office, and you showed up and wanted to have a meeting. It's just a little easier to do that across the state virtually. So you are welcome to give as much or as little detail and kind of why we're having the call.
Yeah, so my name is Charles Henderson. I live in Montevallo, in Montevallo, Alabama. With my wife, we have a small place out here. We've lived out here about 10 years, I guess. I grew up in Alabama, uh, moved out, lived in Texas for about 10 years, moved back to the state in 95, and I've lived in Huntsville, the Birmingham area, uh, and now Montevallo for the past 10 years. I've never really been involved in politics beyond the fact that historically I've been, from my political perspective, a long-term Republican, conservative Republican, until about 6 years ago, and my my worldview, changed dramatically with the 2016 election. And so, I've realized over the past 6 years that kind of my political leanings are really more aligned with the Democratic Party and with a lot of the policies, that you subscribe to. And one of the things I've thought about even prior to kind of my political shift was the fact that the state of Alabama uh, did not choose to expand Medicaid when they could have, and I've never really understood why, and I figured it was kind of the classic. Uh, the state did not want to spend the money to do it. Um, so when I actually saw on Reddit that you were running for governor, clicked on the link, looked at your website, and saw you had this meeting format, and thought that was intriguing. And you on your policies positions section, you talk about Medicaid expansion, and so I sent you the note, and here we are.
Yeah. So I first thank you for being one of those who are willing to reconsider their not positions per se, because my one of my concerns with people who strictly vote with either party is that the parties themselves aren't a man. I can't say that broadly, but they don't have a belief structure that I can fall under. I'll say it that way. And my example is there the Democratic Party as an example. It is you don't have to follow a specific set of policies or beliefs, or at least not narrow enough, in my opinion, in order to run under that party. It's essentially, from everything that I've gathered in this campaign, it is a pay a fee and sign a piece of paper saying you won't be you won't go against the Democratic Party effectively, and then you can run.
Right.
And you can go look to see where that has gotten us this year.
Exactly.
There are plenty of people who are not happy with that ability, and that's one of the reasons I have a hard time ascribing myself or putting myself in one of those buckets. Is that they're too big of a bucket. They're not helpful buckets for me. So I'm running as an independent, and that's part of the reason. One of the reasons I'm not running as a Democrat is that literally it was too late for me. I could not have raised the funding in the timeline that I had when I decided to run to when the deadline was. It was like going off memory, we're going to say it's like 2 weeks, right? So like I had 2 weeks from like, hey, yeah, I'm going to run to the deadline to fill out your paperwork.
Right.
Like I had 2 weeks to raise. I'm going off memory here, but it's like $1,500 essentially. It's a third of the salary for the position you're applying for, a third or a fifth. I don't remember because I'm not running as a Democrat, so I don't really care.
Right.
But effectively, there's a fee for you to apply as a Democrat for a candidacy, and it's based on the salary of the position. And there was no way I was going to raise those funds. I've barely raised past that in the first 4 months of the campaign. So anyway, that's where I'm at. And you wanted to talk about Medicaid, so you came with some info, and so we have a slideshow that I can pull up and present. TikTok, sorry, you won't be able to see it. If you want to see these notes and slides, you can come to one of the other platforms. You can do it after the call because it's all recorded on those platforms. But TikTok doesn't allow me to present stuff to you, so uh, sorry about that. Anyway, so I can pull that up now, or do you want to give any preface between now and the presentation of the slides?
No, we can pull the slides up and kind of
Cool.
walk through them real quick. So if you go to the very last slide, included on the last slide are the links that all the information on the other slide is derived from. So
Right.
I
Yeah, these are quick
basically
references.
did a Google search, right, and looked and kind of went down the Google path and found these documents that were available, and anybody can search and find these. But the first thing I wanted to do was kind of remind myself what Medicaid expansion was. And so if you go back to the first slide, I've got a slide that kind of explains that and what it is. And again, for people that are watching that may be more familiar with this whole topic, forgive me if I make any mistakes, but um, the big thing was that when ACA passed, Obamacare, when it passed in 2012 or 2013, I guess 2013, is as part of that was Medicaid expansion. And currently Medicaid serves people that are below 100% of the poverty line. And what the ACA did is it raised that level for Medicaid up to 138% of poverty. And the reason for that is that the ACA, the ability to purchase on the marketplace begins at either 138% or 139%, whatever it is, 139%, I think, of poverty and above, right? So the concept was that with this solution in place, with Medicaid expanded, and with a marketplace in existence, that people would be covered, right? And then what happened is in 2013, or as soon as the law passed, the state of Texas filed suit saying that this is a federal mandate. The states aren't required to comply with a federal mandate like this. So they sued, and I believe it went to the Supreme Court, and Supreme Court said, yes, that's correct. If a state does not want to participate, they don't have to. So then a lot of states, a lot of red southern states, so Texas, and you can see on the list there, a lot of states opted out, Alabama being one of them. And the second bullet point I have is that one of the key aspects of expansion is that the 10% of the cost of the expansion is burdened by the state, and then the other 90% is the federal government. So it's a pretty good deal, right? You put in $1, you get $9 back.
That sounds like a really good deal to me too, by the way. Just for
Yeah,
the record.
I would take a deal like that.
Yeah.
So the last point I made was just that the states that have said no, we're not going to expand Medicaid. Some states have decided to expand it, and I think there were some incentives as part of the stimulus relief package. Again, for other people who might be watching this now or later, I think the federal government made some incentives in place as part of that to try to stimulate that idea. And Missouri and Oklahoma both voted last year to expand. and from what I could tell, and again, I don't know the details. I did not spend the time researching this, but
Yeah.
um, I think they stated it was put to a vote. So I don't know if it was a state level referendum that the public um, voted in or what. I'm not sure of how it got approved, but it was approved, and now Medicaid has been expanded in Oklahoma and uh, Missouri.
Yeah, from everything that I've seen so far, and again, I I usually like to start these meetings explaining kind of where I'm from on, especially on the meetings that aren't public, because the public hears this pretty much every stream. But uh, my background is like I just got mad. I got mad at the state for how they were deciding to allocate COVID relief, federal COVID relief
Oh yeah,
money
that's
that
that's
would be
that
accepted.
makes me angry too.
Yeah, so that's kind of where I got started. And give me a second while I try to fix my mic volume. I'm getting feedback from one of the platforms that my volume is lower than yours. So let me try to adjust that real quick. Let's see.
I can lower
Start.
mine too if I need to.
Well, I can do it inside the stream, and I may just do that just so it's even. I'll pull yours down a little bit. In the chat, Um, let me know if that's better once we start talking again. But basically, my history is, I got mad at the state in October when I realized how bad the system was, especially on the COVID spending on prisons. But the more I dig, the more I find, the more I get
That's
mad.
crazy.
And
That's a whole
the
nother. We could
yeah,
have another talk on that.
right. But so that's my history. So the point there is, though, the more that I dig into it, the more that I, especially like the Medicaid expansion, everything I can find, it looks like it's just up to the governor to say yes. Like according to the powers that are uh, given to the governor in our state, there aren't any restrictions that I can find so far. We have a very long constitution, so I haven't found anything yet. But there's also nearly 400,000 words in our constitution, so forgive me if I haven't caught it yet. But it doesn't seem like there's anything restricting us uh, from expanding Medicaid. So that it looks like it's just a except and it may be a public perception thing. It might be, there could be all kinds of reasons that currently it has not been accepted since it came into play. But there are
And I did
previous.
I did find yeah I did find a quote, and I can't remember if it's in one of the linked documents that I have attached in the appendix, but Ivy has stated, whether this is true or not, but she stated that she's not necessarily against expansion, but we have to find a quote unquote way to figure it out, right? So I don't know what she means by that, and if it's the financial part of it, or what, or it's just a political statement that she's making.
It would be
Um,
really nice to know what the limitations are so we can address those.
yes,
That's so uh, when I got when I got started, people typically ask like, "Hey, what are you going to do about X?" And I'm like, "Well, that X that is a decision the legislature has to make. So like, can I push them to it? Yes. Can we come up with ideas to present to them? Yes. But like, the problem is I can't do it on my own. So like, I'm like, hey, the legislature has to pass legislation. Like that's how this works. And it's frustrating to know that there are problems, to know that there could be problems preventing us from doing something that would help uh, you know tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands. I don't remember the exact number, but it's like 43% of our currently uninsured would benefit from this expansion.
yes.
I don't remember the exact number, but let's say 43% of our uninsured Alabamians would get some type of coverage. It's not
I think
perfect.
it's on one of the following
Is
slides.
it?
I've
Okay, so
got
let's
some of the numbers in there. If you go to the second one,
yeah, so more than
yeah. So
220 uh, are stretching to pay for coverage. Let's see. Yeah, so
and
out of 220, so we're saying, yeah, we'll say tens of thousands because it might be under that 100,000. But, if it's 90,000 people who could get coverage, like I would like to know why we can't so that we can find the problem or find the solution rather than just saying, well, we got to look into it. It's like, we'll look into what? Like, let us know.
right,
Tell us. Like,
yeah,
this is something that affects a lot of people.
it does. And people, I think people may kind of knee jerk think, well, people just need to go out and earn more money, and then they can afford insurance, and we don't need the state to help, right? I think that's kind of
In theory,
that's the idea. But you know, what can happen is if somebody's gainfully employed, right? But they lose their job, then they may not have, they probably don't have the funds to buy private insurance or even
Yeah, like Cobra
buy insurance
temporary
on the
insurance.
marketplace
Yeah,
or buy Cobra through their employer if they had that option.
right.
And so
Uh,
the idea of Medicaid isn't that it has to cover somebody for life, right? It could be a gap coverage, and I think a lot of the need for it is that gap coverage between jobs or life happening or whatever, right? And you know, the worst that could happen is somebody's successful. They and their family are working, everything's great. Uh, the plant shuts down in county XYZ. They've got commitments in that county. They can't leave, whatever. So now they're unemployed, underemployed, and they need help. And but if something, if a health emergency happens during that time, that health emergency could completely wipe them out, right? I think probably everybody knows that the number one cause of bankruptcy in the United States is a health emergency or health related cost, right? That people
right.
can't pay their $20,000 emergency room visit, right? For
Yeah.
for a broken leg or whatever. So I think that's some of the idea behind why Medicaid expansion be very helpful.
Yeah, no, I 100% agree with expansion being needed. I think the pushback I would give, and just so that everybody's on the same page, is like I lean more towards universal healthcare. Like do I think I can implement that as governor? No, but like I don't think healthcare should be something that's dependent on your income. Uh, I think we need to be able to cover that as a basic human right
and
because the
and I
thinking
and I
historically,
agree,
like
and I
most
think
people think of
as rich
shelter.
as state, I
Go
was just
ahead.
going to say as rich as the U.S. is, right? we have the poorest example of public health in the world, really. If you look at any other peer nation or developed nation compared to the U.S., our healthcare system in terms of how we support our people is really sad. Um, and yeah,
Yeah.
I think a single payer solution is it makes probably the most financial sense, and it makes it makes the most sense for the population, really.
As I say, it makes the most financial sense all around.
Right.
From everything that I'm seeing from other countries, is it costs everybody less, including us. Like because there's the is it Katie Porter? Is that the congresswoman who
Yes, I know
likes
her.
to
I did.
lives on
Yeah,
wakeboard?
I'm
She has
familiar with
made some
her.
very good points, and one of it's even if you just account for the administrative and marketing costs of private insurance. Like that is something the state or the federal government, ideally, because they're the ones that could fund it directly and are currently right. So they're paying for most of it anyway. If they were to be the single payer situation, there's no need to advertise because they are the solution. So like there's concerns like we got to make sure that the plan actually helps people, right? So like I'm not saying it doesn't need to be thought through, but having the government fund it to where they can help make sure everybody has access to healthcare makes the most sense, and it's cheaper. So like pick a topic, but it is better for everyone, every person all around.
Right.
There are companies that are not going to like that change, but I have made it very public that I am here to help the people of our state, and if your business doesn't benefit when the people benefit, I don't care as much. And that's uh,
Yeah.
I
I
don't know what
think.
to tell you if your business is reliant on people suffering. So like I don't have empathy for that part.
Yeah, I agree with that
Yeah.
statement. If you go to the last slide, well, not the last
Yeah.
slide, but
We
the
got one
third
more.
slide,
Oh yeah,
I've just got
the
some more.
non-topics. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
I've got some more just information. And what's really interesting, both of these the studies, and both of these studies are linked in that fourth slide. Um, the last one, the first one's a Kaiser Family Foundation,
Hmm.
and they do a lot of great stuff, but they they have kind of a general expansion summary document that's maybe 3 or 4 pages that goes through how expansion would help Alabama specifically, and
Yeah.
it cites some, there's some really good numbers in there. Um,
Yep.
the the last bullet is a study that was done specifically um, by multiple foundations. The Daniel Foundation, I believe, is one. Um, some other Alabama foundations, and it was done specifically in response to KIV's, kind of generalized statement that it seems like it might work, but we need to figure it out, right? And I think that her exact quote, I think, is somewhere in the body of that study.
Okay.
But that third bullet is what there's some items in here that you talked about trying to understand more about what is it that's holding us back. And
Yeah.
if you look at the document, it's literally a no-brainer, because the they state that it's going to cost more, right? It's going to cost 225 million more, but you're going to save almost 400 million. So it's going to cost you 225, but it's going to save 400 million.
In
So you're
other
going to
areas.
net out,
Yeah. It's a
right?
net
But
benefit.
still,
Yeah.
and it's a net, and it's a net benefit within the Medicaid program, the way as
Right.
I've read it, and that maybe I misinterpreted numbers, but some of the ancillary benefits are creates they estimate that it would create uh, you know 20 jobs, and have almost a $2 billion a year economic impact. And that, so things like some of the problems we've seen with
Yeah.
rural hospitals closing because they don't have, they can't fund themselves, or um, a lot of the help.
Right.
um, some of the poor parts of the state of Alabama provide health care to its local population, could be greatly helped with expansion. So it's that's or listening is interested to understand more about the specifics around expansion. I would suggest reading that study, and it's about 20 or 30 pages, but there's a lot of information in it, and the numbers, like the savings numbers, they don't explain exactly how the savings come about. Um,
Right.
so I don't know exactly how that works, and if you have to have the seed money first, you got to spend it, and then you get the savings on the back end, or if it's just same year savings, I don't know how it would work.
Yeah. So, and the only thing that I've heard pushback from the medical community, and it's one person, so like take it with a giant grain of salt. Uh, they mentioned that even if we expand Medicaid, it won't benefit people like the numbers are saying, because the facilities don't always accept Medicaid. So that's the only pushback that I've heard, not anybody who's in power, but it was a physician who mentioned it. Um, the caveat would be they also were against raising the minimum wage. So like I take that comment that they gave with a very large grain of salt, because they don't want to increase the minimum wage for people, but they also don't want to increase Medicaid because they don't think that physicians will be able to provide their services, or that physicians will, not that they can't. So that's the one thing I still need to figure out, is if there's a way that in my position, will be able to help that problem, or if that is something that has to change at another level. That's
Well,
something I've got to look
well,
into.
well, I'll say this: as I found, an individual physician that has a physician's office, doctor's office, they may not accept Medicaid today, and so they wouldn't benefit from expansion tomorrow. However, hospitals, one of the statistics I found is that hospitals, quote unquote, donate, right, almost $1 billion worth of their services um, to Medicaid today. And so again, exactly, you can find these, and those numbers are straight from the Alabama, state of Alabama Medicaid um, statistics, right? So,
Gotcha.
and another, you talk about transparency, right? The statistics for the state of Alabama's Medicaid program have not been kept up since 2019, and maybe that's a COVID thing. I don't know, but um, you
It's
can't
not
find
the
any
only
data
department.
beyond 2019, statistical data. But in that, the data that's still out there, um, there's a pie chart in one of the graphs on one of the links that I attached where the hospital contribution, and it's called hospital donation or contribution, is $750 million a year.
Yeah,
So
so
if,
my understanding is that most of the hospitals in our state, if not across the country, but if I'm remembering correctly, somebody I was talking to, the majority of the hospitals in our state are uh, effectively nonprofit. Like they're designed to where they have to provide care and have ways of providing care also. So that's something I want to mention here, just because if this isn't in place yet, so if you don't have access, please make sure you check with your hospital to figure out if they have a way of offsetting some of those fees that you incur when you visit. Uh, I can't remember the name of the process, and I'm not sure that I should give specific recommendations from the campaign platform. But please look into your hospitals because they should have a way of you know helping with those costs because
yeah,
they're set up to charge by the through their normal insurance fees. They're set up to charge the highest amount from their current contracted companies. So whatever the highest rate is for a given procedure is what they charge. Like that's what they bill for. So it may not be and it may not be or sorry it's not going to be accurate. It's just it happens to be the highest one that one of their people charge, whether it's your company or not, right? So if an insurance company can bill uh, X amount of dollars, that's how much they bill for. Or maybe not insurance company, sorry, I may be mixing terms because we're doing it live, but the one of the providers, if they bill
sure.
$3,000 for a service and another provider bills 1,500, you're going to get the $3,000 bill. That just
Right. And
that's how
but if you
it
think
works out.
if you think about probably how a lot of the hospitals are, how they are impacted by the lack of expansion today, right, is a person who's not covered with any kind of medical insurance or Medicaid. If they have an emergency, they're going to go to probably a hospital ER. They'll be treated by that ER. The ER will, you know, um, have those ER expenses on their books, and they'll never see payment for that, right? They'll donate those services. That'll be counted again with expansion. They'd be able to collect on much more of those kind of events.
Right.
And again, if we had expansion, then people would be able to be covered, and it would go through the normal process, and the hospitals would be paid, and hopefully again they wouldn't have to write off so much, which
Right.
may mean that they're having to charge more for the people who can pay for the services to be at that break even nonprofit level.
Yeah.
So again, that's that 1.89 billion of economy that can be built in to the state's healthcare system that could benefit from expansion.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate you taking some time with me. I do have to end the call. We went a little bit past 8:30 because we were having some technical difficulties at the beginning, and
Yeah,
now we've
sorry
continued
about
into the
that.
stream. No, that's okay. It's technology, so it happens. I will take these snafus if they continue us to allow us to have a very open and public conversation where people understand what conversations happen regularly with government, but normally behind closed doors. So like conversations like this with a constituent necessarily isn't a regular thing. At least it doesn't seem like it. Uh, but this type of conversation happens where the the executive level has discussions with people who have information about a specific department and they help make decisions on how that gets handled moving forward. And that's something more people need to understand on how government works. It's not like there isn't a, it's not an authoritarian position like that. People have this mentality that in the executive level of any executive position of any level of government is like the end all be all, but it's the director. They're
Right.
the conductor. They're the, you know, they're the project manager of that level of government. So if it's the, you know, the mayor, if it's the governor, if it's the president of the United States, they aren't they're not the end all be all. And in fact, their powers are limited intentionally. And that's why we have the three branches of government. So, you know, make sure you are staying informed on how that process works. And the thing I'll follow up with is different at every state. So the position of governor has very different powers than the governor in Arizona. And there's actually a group that puts out a resource every year that shows the current powers and structures and rules and everything else around state government. It's called the state of the Book of States. Go look that thing up, and you can download the PDF and look at your state. So if you're watching this from another state and you're not in Alabama and you're watching this for some reason, go look it up. But if you want to see what the governor and the lieutenant governor and, you know, all the other positions we have, what they can do, most of the big ones are broken down, and you can see each state what each of those people can do. And it's eye opening to know that there are some huge differences between the states in the same position. So check those out. Charles, I appreciate you taking some time to meet with me today. And I know that's kind of backwards. Most people want to say the other way, and you know, I'm happy to do it. But I also, the state needs more people involved in government at an everyday level. Like we've got to be listening to the people, otherwise we are not doing this in a way that's going to benefit them because we're not listening to them. So that's what I'm
Right.
here for. You want to
Well,
wrap
well,
up?
thanks again. Yeah, thanks for having me and letting me solicit my ideas
Sure.
um, yeah, I appreciate it. And thanks for the forum. I think this is great.
Sure. Yeah, of course. And if you want to have another one later, if you get some new info, schedule a meeting. It is on the website. You can go to my website and go to the schedule a meeting page and book a time. If I have something available, my calendar is open to talk to people who want to benefit the state and improve the lives of the people who live here. So, with that, I'm going to say y'all have a good rest of the day. I have to head out, and we will talk to you soon.